2015, we've launched the bar. It's doing really well in specialty, really well in GNC, Holland and Barrett, doing well in Tesco's. But again, we're looking at that chocolate category. And I don't think even we thought that we could disrupt chocolate, because I just thought the numbers would be huge, which they are huge. But, we quickly became the number one selling protein bar in the UK, which wasn't really that difficult because protein bars didn't sell, as we said, because nobody made a good one. Yeah. So we quickly became number one. And then in about 2017, we'd hired someone again to start looking at the category data, and specific like Nielsen data and IRI. And I became obsessed with, okay, so we're a big fish in a small pond. We're dominating protein bars in specialty. I wonder what this chocolate category actually looks like. Is it going to be absolute sort of pie in the sky? And we hired a data guy, and again we said, actually, tell us where we are in terms of chocolate sales. And we just got into the top 20 best-selling chocolate bars fairly early on. And actually,
when you weren't even in that fixture.
No, we weren't even in the fixture.
Do you know what the numbers were? Rate of sale per store per week?
I'd be making it up, to be perfectly honest.
Yeah. Just interesting to know what that.
I could specifically pretty much tell you what the top 5 were. And again, the order would change, from one month to the next. But that top 5, you'd got Dairy Milk, Snickers, Mars.
How many are they doing?
Ferrero.
Or is it...
in the millions and millions of bars, which you'd understand. But I think with the big boys I've just mentioned, that top 5, I think I was quite surprised at some of the numbers for, say, the lower half of, going towards the top 20. So like, Twix and Crunchy and Whisper and stuff, they were still in the millions, but it was kind of the low millions.
And you could go after that. So.
Yeah, I'm thinking, actually, we can make a dent here. And I don't know what they're going to do to stop it. And something interesting happened at the time where we were selling protein bars. And I think Mars had then clocked onto the idea that people were probably after something that was a bit better for them.
Their protein.
They did a Mars protein bar.
You a favour?
It did us a massive favour. And again, I think... for 2 reasons, actually. First of all, it really started to legitimise the category and that protein was good for you because Mars were playing in it. And their Mars bar was £2. So they gave us their Mars protein bar, rather. So they gave us a fantastic leap from the price of a Mars bar into they really almost closed the gap to the £2.50.
Yeah, I suppose the cognitive lift for the buyer and the consumer is like, grenade 250 versus...
all of a sudden then, consumer didn't have to spend 3 times as much. They had to spend an extra 50p.
There's Rory... do you know much about Rory Sutherland? He's the sort of marketing genius. But he says there's Rolls-Royce, I think it is, will always exhibit at yacht shows. Where you sell yachts, because you're at a yacht show, you're going to get loads of minted fuckers there, and they'll be like, oh yeah, the context of a Rolls Royce next to a yacht makes it seem bloody cheap, right? So, but I suppose Mars has almost done that for you in the sense they've
Well, you're judged by the company you keep.
Yeah.
And at the time, we were very much known in sports nutrition, and we were doing sports nutrition shows. And there's nothing wrong with that at all. But I just wanted to be so much more than a sports nutrition brand. So I didn't want to be standing next to sports nutrition companies at a fitness show.
Yeah.
Because I wanted to be standing next to Cadbury or Red Bull at a food show. So the difference, I just really had this aspiration to just compete with the very best, because I knew then and I know now we've got a world-class brand.
Yeah.
So, and actually, it's important to say, because I get asked this a lot in terms of people buying protein bars for sports nutrition, and people will say to me, why should I buy your protein bars? You really shouldn't. You should be eating a balanced diet. And you should be eating, high protein and, moderate carb or high fat or low carb or whatever you believe in. But you should be eating a good, nutritious diet. And most people probably know what that is. But the reality of day to day is they just don't do it because of time, and life takes over and they end up out and about. You've got to be really organised to be good at diet and nutrition, including myself. I'm not very organised. I got sick of driving to petrol stations and buying something I really didn't want because I was hungry, to be honest. I was probably buying sushi or nuts or something at the time. And I thought, I'm sure I could get something better. So a part of it was me thinking, actually, I'd buy this. And if I'd buy it, so would other people. And actually, I say to people all the time, you should be preparing your food yourself at home. And if you don't have time to do that or can't be bothered to do that, then you should probably be buying our supplements, to be fair. Yeah. And it's just that simple. We don't, we're not desperately trying to flog product to people. We're trying to give people a solution, a convenient solution to a problem that we know that they have.
Yeah,
and I think that's a good way of looking at some of these businesses. Just coming back in then to the top 20, I'm quite obsessive, and I became obsessed with this top 20. And before you know it, we're in the top 10, and before you know it, we're in the top 5.
You're looking at category data.
I'm looking at category data, and I'm thinking,
how are you using the category data to advance your position?
So basically, it's difficult to get like for like examples.
Yeah.
But let's make.
That's when it becomes a game of chess, doesn't it? Kind of.
Well, imagine let's say let's take Kinder Bueno. I think at the time they were either number 1 or number 2, and interestingly, actually with Kinder, they were probably the only chocolate bar in the top 20 that had been invented in the last 20 or 30 years. It was amazing. Yeah, because I think the new
Kinder Bueno's new, quite a new thing.
Pretty new, yeah.
Really?
So put it this way, I remember Whisper coming out because my dad, when I was at school, my best friend, his dad was a rep for Cadbury. I grew up near Cadbury, so we've got a specific affinity with Cadbury. And I remember him giving me a new chocolate bar to try, and it was Whisper. It was like the early 80s, but Whisper was kind of considered the new kid on the block, because if you look at, you don't realise how long a lot of these chocolate bars have been around. Cream Egg's something like the 1950s.
Really?
It just hasn't changed because
What's the oldest chocolate bar?
It's everywhere. Oh, in the UK.
Is Cadbury's Dairy Milk the oldest? That's their...
and Bourneville probably would be up there. Probably
really?
Is. Yeah, probably is. So I think because this stuff's just been there forever, and it's a British institution, that we all know and love. I think Cadbury's has, many times been voted the nation's favourite brand, and for good reason. Just because it's been there forever, no one's ever really thought to replace it with something. Because I think in the past, if you want to compete with something, then you come up with something similar. So you've just got to make a better chocolate bar, which is fair enough. But I prefer competing with brands in a way that probably we're strong and they're weak. And I think this is, we could use Virgin Cola as an example. Virgin Cola. So Virgin Cola
didn't work. Did that work?
It didn't really work out. But again, they attacked Coke.
Yeah.
And I don't think they really, apart from a great brand name, a Virgin, I don't think they really had a good enough point of difference versus Coca-Cola, because they were both, high sugar fizzy drinks.
Yeah.
So you were just going to swap a high sugar fizzy drink to another high sugar fizzy drink. And I think people probably said they preferred the taste of Virgin Coke versus regular Coke. But I don't think taste was necessarily, enough in that circumstance. I actually don't think it tasted better either, to be perfectly honest. Yeah. And I don't like Coke either, so I actually like Pepsi. But we digress. But going back to the top 5 in confectionery, I just became obsessed with how can we become number 1, and distribution points is key. So let's say, if you're Kinder Bueno and you've got, 200,000 distribution points and you're doing 5 million.
When you say distribution points, that's not stores, right?
No, it's not stores. It's a number of facings in stores. So you might have 4 facings in a store, which would be 4 distribution points. Or you could take store numbers. But whatever metric you decide, you got that number for the stores that we know that they're in, and then the number that we know they're selling, based either on unit volume or cash rate of sale, and then you look at our product and make as direct a comparison as you can. And let's say that the number 1 selling chocolate bar is in 100,000 locations and he's doing 5 million. Well, and then we look at us and we're in 10,000 locations but are doing 4 million, we've actually got the better rate of sale. So you think, well, if we've got 10,000, we've got less distribution points. So we're saying, well, look how many they've got and what they do. Look how many we've got and what they do. And also, look how much cash it puts in the till. Because one of the first conversations I had with Rontec and the petrol stations were, every time you sell a chocolate bar, you make 13p. Every time you sell one of our bars, you make £1.50. What would you rather have in the till? You've got to sell 10 chocolate bars for every one of our protein bars. That's quite compelling to a retailer. So all of a sudden, our fairly high price is actually a massive selling point.
Yeah. Did you use, because, I love really getting deep on this. I find it such a fascinating game. But with the petrol stations, did you almost use that because that's when you're in all? I was in the BP last night, mate. Like you're in. It's like, and then you've got the big.
It's everywhere.
It's like a gondola end, or not a gondola end, but like a FSDU.
You know what they've realised? So again, this goes back to another conversation I had with Ron Tech fairly early on, and Gerald Ronson told me this. He said, where do you want to be in my store? And I said, at the till point. And he said, no, you don't.
Why did he say that?
Because everything sells at the till points. They don't learn anything. So he said, yeah, so you can put, because everyone sees it.
Yeah.
So
no, but what he said about you don't learn anything is, so what, where
because
did you
because
put it
he knew if he put us at the till point, we'd sell quite a lot, but it wasn't going to live at the till point forever because that is prime real estate and people pay for that. So, it wouldn't have been a fair trial. So he said, I'm going to put you at the back of the store. And basically, which he did, and I went to that store, it was in Peterborough, and I met the store owner and I gave him a t-shirt and gave him some samples of bars. And I said, everyone who comes into the store, ask him if they want to buy a protein bar. And explained again you could make 13p or you could make £1.50 or whatever. What would you rather have? And then we got the data, and then we did that with 10 stores and 50 stores, like I said. And before you know it, not only are we outselling chocolate 10-1, but we're actually their cash margin is tenfold as well.
Winning, sort of thing.
So everyone's winning.
Yeah.
And actually, again, really apart from the confectionery companies, but to a certain extent, people are still buying chocolate, but also they've kind of had it themselves for the last 100 years.
Yeah.
So, that's how business works. Someone comes along and, we're a lot more expensive and we're a different product. If you want to go and buy chocolate. We all like chocolate. But if you want something different, this is something different. So we've been an absolute nightmare to compete with for confectioners because there's not a lot they could do.
Espressos is sponsored by supply chain software gurus Unleashed. It talks to your e-com and accounting software. It's helped Islands cut admin time in half, get granular clarity on your margins, know where your stock is, don't miss availability. Brands like Candy Kittens, Tiny Rebel and Trip all use Unleashed, and so should you.